Meridian Schools for Boys and Girls, Banjara Hills, Hyderabad has completed 27 years and is poised for a quantum leap into the future by adapting to the challenges of an ever-evolving educational scenario. Connecting the mind and heart fluidly and flawlessly, Meridian creates a holistic new millennial global generation of citizens who are high achievers, balancing professional commitment with social conscience. A new generation educational group committed to educate children for life, Meridian seeks to bring a change in the society. The learning philosophy practiced at Meridian infuses traditional values into a progressive approach, equipping students to adapt and excel anywhere in the world. Meridian School for Boys and Girls, Banjara Hills was founded on 12th of July 1995 by Mr. Neelkanta and Mrs. Renuka Bhutta with a vision to offer quality education. The flagship school has grown from strength to strength and has achieved unparalleled success not only in academics but also like performing arts and sports, ensuring a 360-degree achievement. The schools are affiliated to CBSE up to 12th and also in this conversation, Suresh Kochatil will be speaking to Dr. Usha Reddy, Principal and CEO of Meridian Group of Schools, a renowned educationist. She is an alumnus of Jiddu Krishnamurthy Foundation's Rishi Valley School. Her perspective on education focuses on inner transformation. Endowed with exceptional leadership qualities, she was the chairperson of Hyderabad Sahodaya School Complex, a conglomerate of 200 CBSE schools. As a CBSE master trainer, she has mentored over 800 educators, encouraging collaboration and exchange of best practices. She promotes holistic development through academic excellence and students' participation in sports, science, art, and literary events where students have won accolades. Being passionate about school's social responsibility, she believes that developing the intellect alone is inadequate and focuses on multiple social relevant activities that stimulate the soul and mold the character of a student. A champion of inclusive education, she has made a difference in the lives of children with special needs. With diverse achievements to her credit, she has received multiple Best Principal Awards for Service in Education and Excellence Awards from 3 Governors of State and 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards. She is also the recipient of the prestigious National Award for Teachers in 2010 from then Honorable President of India. Her recent feather in the cap is receiving the Honorary Professor's title from Oxford Academic Union, Oxford. A multifaceted, high-end achiever, Dr. Reddy is an inspiration and exemplary educator who connects the mind and heart and touches lives in a simple yet profound way.
Welcome to Brainfeed EdTalks powered by Tutoroot Technologies. Educationists, they say, are not born but made. Some of them start at the bottom of the heap and grow up along the way. And they add talent and of course master the art of managing a school. Today we have one such person with us. Dr. Usha Reddy, CEO of Meridian Schools and Principal of Meridian School here in Banjara Hills, Hyderabad. As we get to speak to her, let us look at her track record. An alumnus of the famous Rishi Valley School, the Jiddu Krishnamurthy Foundation, and of course being the convener or kind of head of Sahodaya Schools, Hyderabad Sahodaya Schools, more than 200 of them in number. She has been a master trainer for more than 800 academicians. With such laurels and such academic credentials, Usha Reddy is the right person we need to speak about the future of education and where we will be, say 20 years from now. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
At the outset, let me start by asking you the question which I often ask many educationists is about the institution which you head, the Meridian Schools.
That's right.
Where are you in terms of where did you start? Where did the school start, the group start? And where are you now in terms of the growth that you had over the last few years?
So Meridian School, Banjara Hills is the flagship school and was founded in the year 1995 by the promoters, Mr. Neelkant and Mrs. Renuka Bhutta. I joined the school in 99 and we were affiliated to the CBSE. But I think what really kind of made my journey interesting here is that we picked up the rejects from some of the top schools who were removed in grade 9 because they didn't want their results to get affected in grade 10. So we worked with them so hard, and we managed to get the children to do reasonably well, and some of them even got distinctions. I think when you work with the heart, the doors open up for all of us. And I think destiny opened its doors for us. And we had about 685 admissions with a blink. And then when this school had become a success story, the management wanted us to set up another one at Madhapur. So 2006, I began functioning as a principal of both the branches and put the similar systems in place. Shortly, we had in 2008 the third branch of Meridian Schools opening up at Kukatpalli. Once we had done this, we started refining the pedagogy in our schools and seeing what the children actually need in today's day and age, and started doing things in a different manner. Currently, we also have the first franchise branch of ours functioning exceedingly well at Uppal. I think it's a journey that will continue for the years to come. As long as we can think afresh and keep in tow with what's happening, the latest trends in education all over the world, I think there's no stopping any group for that matter from growing to the best that they are capable of.
You come from the Jiddu Krishnamurti Foundation background. You're alumnus of the Rishi Valley School. There, the education is totally different, isn't it? When you compare that with a brick and mortar model of schools in the cities, that's a far cry. How did you manage to bring in best elements of the Jiddu Krishnamurti Foundation, the Rishi Valley schools, into a school like Meridian?
Well, I think Rishi Valley is, and will remain a class apart, because it was founded by a philosopher, Jiddu Krishnamurti. So the intent of why he started the school and the lines on which he wanted to run the school was totally different from most business houses today that actually start schools. So I think in Rishi Valley, the numbers were restricted. We were just about 350 children. We had some of the most brilliant teachers, to teach us. Nothing was enforced, and neither was assessment a rule to assess the brilliance of any child. It was more to do with creativity. It was more to do with following your passion. Everything was acceptable. Mistakes were permissible, and children grew because they learnt from their mistakes. Such an open environment actually created thinkers and children who were never afraid to ask questions. I think that's when the originality of a personality and the development of a character gets refined. Now, trying to compare that with what we do at Meridian, yes, I must say that it's difficult to have a similar setup, but we do try our best. For, like Jiddu Krishnamurti says, a school should have the intent to bring out the best in every individual. Let them flower on their own, because no two children are the same. I think at Meridian, we value that aspect in every child. That's why we're also known as an inclusive school, opening doors to anybody who wishes to be part of the philosophy that we have set. I must say subtly, whatever I am is because what my school imbibed in me. So in that sense, when I try to train my teachers, without my knowledge, I think a part of Rishi Valley will always be a part of me and will keep getting spread to the community that I belong. In a residential school, you are there 24/7. So the transformation of character, which we would aim at, and I think the openness with which you can have that interaction with your teachers, even after school hours, is, I think, the biggest learning experience for us. But here in day schools, children are exposed to other environments. The moment they leave school and go back home, they're exposed to a lot of media, they're exposed to a lot of things in the environment. So coming with that focused mindset to get transformed is a little challenging. But I think when they enter the portals of your school, I hope those thoughts keep coming back to them and will become a lifestyle.
In fact, you did speak interestingly about the inclusiveness of education in this. There are examples like, of course, Rishi Valley, then there's Shantiniketan, where children kind of develop innate quality for something different, not the run-of-the-mill stuff. But when you look at a school like Meridian, you must have brought in many elements, as you rightly described, from various thoughts that are coming in. I think one of the things which I read about you is that you actually have a lot of focus on differently abled children. I would call it that way, especially able children. There are extremes to it. There are children with very ADHDs, and then you have children with autism. So you have a mix of both this kind of thing. But then you have children who are normal, considered normal. How do you bring in all these different elements into a classroom?
I think this is one area I'm extremely passionate about. To be honest, initially when we started taking these children, because I didn't have the heart to turn them down, I said when there is a will, there will be a way. So we will find teachers who are trained. We will kind of bring the awareness with our parent community. One of the first things that we started when we became an inclusive school or decided to become an inclusive school is to bring about parent awareness, to let them know that their children will become better people because they will open their hearts to others who may not be half as fortunate as them. So when you take in children with various disabilities, I think we have to give a briefing to the school and to the parent community along with the teachers. One thing we practice as Meridian is never to sympathize with these children. Empathy is all right and doing the right things to make them comfortable, but never sympathize with them. And for these children, I think we try to push that energy into them to say that don't worry, that, all of us have some aspect in life that we're not good at, or probably life has not given that to us. But when we make up our minds, we can succeed no matter what. And one of our biggest success stories of a boy called Venkatesh who was visually impaired. Such a brilliant child, very playful, was doing average in studies. But by the time he got adjusted with the school, with the teachers, and with a lot of support from his parents, I think he turned out to be the star. He passed out with brilliant percentage, and it gives us pride that today he's in Seattle in Washington, D.C. University doing his PhD, and he's interning with Apple. I feel very, very satisfied because when I think he was in grade 7 itself, he told me that, ma'am, one day I want to work with this company. So, when you know that you have played a small role, leading these children to where they will ultimately reach, it's a very satisfying kind of a profession that we're in. And we await such results. And it's not just Venkatesh. We've had others as well, who are doing exceedingly well. Some of them who become entrepreneurs. Some of them, they may not have completed their education, but they're doing exceedingly well in life.
So when you look at inclusive learning, blended learning, the pandemic suddenly brought in something different. None of us were prepared for it, right from educational institutions to organizations. Suddenly, people were stuck at home. People started working from remote locations. And education, I think, was never prepared for it, honestly. How did you as an institution, like others in this field, suddenly get adjusted to this online methodology of teaching? And of course, later on, when the schools reopened, as we're seeing now, coming back to the offline mode of teaching and something of a blended learning in between. How is this all panning out to?
Well, I think, my teachers and we as a school were better prepared than some others, I should say. We were fortunate because the flipped classroom model was something that we have been practicing for a couple of years. And teachers were tech savvy. But the honest part of it is, yes, we had to start using different apps to assess our children and to keep them engaged, which I think a lot of research was involved, and getting the teachers to get trained online and to start using them, applying them day in and day out. Yes, initially was a challenge, but I think by and by, they got the hang of it. When it comes to children with special needs, my heart goes out, but I think trying to train them through technology was a hard task because their attention span is very less. And also they need that personal touch from the teacher, and we need to draw them back, especially the mildly autistic with cue cards. You have to keep getting and drawing their attention back to focus, which was a little hard for us to do online. And I think that's where the learning gap for them perhaps is more than what we expected. Now, after schools have reopened, I think the same system is being followed. But I think from April going forward, the new academic session, we're going to make it totally offline. But certain things that we learnt during the pandemic, like having PTMs online, I think is very effective. You're conserving the environment, saving, fuel. And also, parents can sit in the comfort of their homes and have a one-on-one with the teacher and can discuss the child as per the time slot and need not be waiting in the classroom for some other parent to finish their turn. So I think something that we learnt during the pandemic must go on. I, for one, when you're talking of, the hybrid model, I think on Saturdays, we've decided that it will be only online classes. So I think the teachers get a break and so will the students. So I think certain things will continue for eternity.
So this blended model of learning, as we call it, where you bring in a lot of technology, many of the schools scrambled into action to bring technology into their education system. I was speaking to a lot of school principals and educationists and presidents and secretaries of trust that run schools. And they tell me that, like many other lessons learned during the pandemic, the online thing is something that will never go away. There will always be a blended learning, as you rightly said, on Saturdays, bring in online journey. But there can also be use of technology to bridge that gap between what is taught in the school and what we traditionally call tuitions. When we were young, we used to go to tuitions because parents often felt that there's some subjects, like for example, mathematics, which children needed that extra bit than what was taught in a classroom of those days, 60 children, where individual attention was not possible. Do you think technology, like for example, the companies like Tutoroot, which is a part of this show, bring in that kind of element into learning that is off after the class hours? Do you think that is something that is going to come more and more into the educational system of schools? And maybe the schools also will try and complement it instead of kind of going against it.
Yeah, I think that's, proper use of technology is the need of the hour. So when you look at a lot of open source that children can, kind of watch and learn by themselves. So to me, it is creating a generation of self-learners. You actually don't even need a teacher. If you have the right technology that you can use at home, you can just browse anything, on the internet and become a self-learner. So I think for people who are above average or the gifted children, as I see it, can make abundant use of what is available. And you also have these groups that you can start interacting and chatting with. So there's an exchange of ideas of people who have the same, capacity, intellectual capacity as you. When it comes to teachers also, now if you look at what has happened after the NET and the number of hours that they need to get trained, it has become so easy. Each one picking up between 25 to 50 certifications only because it's online. But the same thing, if it was an investment to get somebody to actually come and train them, or for them to go and travel, take off from school and then go and get trained, I think it wouldn't have happened so effectively. But the point that you're talking of is after school, for children who weren't able to understand. Today you can record your classrooms, especially if a child is absent, or even for a child who's attended, but may just need to revisit it, because some of them will need that reiteration for better memory enhancement and understanding. It's a possibility today. So schools can actually send that home, the link, and the child can review everything that the teacher has taught or the board work that she has done, and it would probably be effective. I think some of the parents, and we know in India it's a craze, may go on for these online, classes that are available. And I don't want to mention any company per se, but they may enroll for something like that. Some students, it may work, but I won't say for all, because many of them will still need a lot of hand-holding in terms of encouraging them and actually seeing where they're going wrong and enforcing that they see that and practice and take it to the next level. So I think that human touch always makes a difference, but technology is here to stay. And for those of them who can use it effortlessly, I think it's something that will definitely aid their learning process.
Parents, the biggest I wouldn't call it hindrance, but I know disruptor in the entire chain of cycle of education. Mm-hmm. Quite often parents think that by the time they pay the fees, it's a responsibility of the school to take care of the child from there on. Most of the parents both of them are working, husband, wife are working. They don't have time to sit with the child like the good old days and look at the homework, what they do, kind of help the child. It's usually either the tuitions or the online system that takes care of all this. Now, in such a scenario, when you look at the entire gamut of what's happening, do you think the expectations of parents have increased over the years? Do you think they think that schools need to take care of everything that is related to a child? Do you think that's the stuff that's happening today?
Unfortunately, yes. I think the expectations from parents, are kind of defined, or the school must help them define the expectations. So it's not just the school's roles or responsibility. I think all the stakeholders, we ought to know what is it that we need to contribute, because we're all focusing on that child and we need to see what best we can do to bring out the best in every child. But yes, when you have busy parents who are working, then I think the expectations sometimes get tilted towards what they expect schools to do. From our, perspective, we're very open to taking on that little bit of additional role and responsibility, because I look at it that when you talk of education, it's not just the academics. It's a whole lot of other skills and character building that one needs to focus on. And that's why I feel, schools are there to stay. So I think that personal rapport that we give between the teacher and the child, between the bond between the child and the school, is very integral to his safety net and the way he grows up into a secure and intelligent, emotionally intelligent individual. So I look at it in that holistic way. So wherever we find that there's a problem at home, there are many a time where we've pitched in. And it's very satisfying that the kids still come back to us, especially when they come back from abroad and they say, this is home. So we came to meet you all. I mean, I said, what more would we want as educationists? It's a very emotional moment for us. And we have to cajole them to say, it's okay. We understand what you've been through, but why don't you just go visit your father? It will always be after the school for many of them, because we have bonded so well with them and held their hands through all the difficulties. So I think this is the speciality of schools.
You handled this 200 Sahodya CBSE schools into a kind of composite unit, advising them, herding them, mentoring them. Each school is different. I mean, Meridian has something which other schools don't have. The other schools don't have something which Meridian has. But over the years, as you've seen CBSE evolve into different characteristics, and today there are a lot more options for a student who is in CBSE than what they had before. The national curriculum that has come in, that has also brought in a lot of changes. But do you think we need to get somewhere, we need to make children thinkers rather than rote learners? Because we in India are considered very good at rote learning. You give them a formula and say, this is how it had to be replicated, and that's how it is replicated. But we don't produce a nation of thinkers. Jiddu Krishnamurthy Foundation and the Rishi Valley School are exception. Shanti Niketan, as I said before, is an exception. But do you think the CBSE also needs to change to make this possible?
Well, CBSE is trying hard, but I always feel when you look at exam as something that will lead to the goal of an examination and the results, then I think that is not education at all, according to me. So when you want to create thinkers, there should be no fear, first of all, in a school environment. So at Rishi Valley, we had this beautiful practice, which was called Astachal. So by the end of the day, the entire school would go up to a hillock, and in silence, we would just watch the sunset. I've realized now that what my school put through is that you try to delve deeper into yourself, and you try to sort out anything that went through the day, and you also have the energy saying, tomorrow is a fresh start. In that sense, you find creative solutions for whatever you went through. I believe where there's no pressure and where there is no fear, all kids can become very creative thinkers. We focus right from our primary years to making them inquirers. So never be afraid to ask, never be afraid to kind of research and draw your own conclusions. Don't accept everything that's been given as the ultimate truth, because your experience will create something better for you. So I think when schools take on that openness, I think children will definitely start doing things creatively. If you're talking about the examinations and how acceptance of creative answers is not acceptable, as long as the value points are there, I guess, you will still be bagging those marks. But yes, in India, most examinations, and I would attribute this because I've seen, even in some of the state boards, that the papers go to people who will not be able to evaluate the children if they have something off the textbook, which is a sad state of affairs. So I do believe for the quality of education in India to rise, it must begin with the right educators mentoring the teachers. It cannot be an outside agency. So I think that is the biggest role that we all need to take up in India.
Educators mentoring teachers. That's my favorite subject, because quite often most of us remember as high school teachers or junior school teachers. I, for example, remember my English teacher, Farkunda Karimullah, she's no more, God bless her, to making me what I am today, pushing me onto the stage, making me speak extempore. But today's teachers play multiple roles within the classroom and outside the classroom. Some of them handle lots of corrections. There are entering the marks into the system. Then there are worksheets to be prepared. Teaching in the classroom, I mean, they hardly get time for, they get pressurized a lot to do 5 to 6 hours of teaching in the school. Now, in such an environment, do you think today's teachers, and I'm not hinting at Meridian as such, but generally, since you've been handling this entire Sahodia schools in terms of CBSE, do you think, I mean, like college professors, the teachers' number of hours they teach, they need to be reduced so that they can prepare better for the classroom? Do you think that is something we should look forward to?
I just wish it's a very idealistic situation. So firstly, getting back to the Sahodia, when we all came together and decided to stay together, I think each of us was working in silos. No good school shared what they were doing. It was all very secretive. And I think, we were at that point, I realized people were looking at each other in the eyes of competition. But today, it's all about sharing of best practices. So I think that's making a very vibrant kind of a community. Now, getting back to what you were saying as to how do we go about, bringing this creativity, is it? Your question,
the point is getting the teachers free of their, say, administrative duties,
right,
into concentrating on actual teaching. Because that's where you see in professional institutions, like, for example, IIMs and IITs, where the professor teaches only for 2 to 3 hours a week. But that 2 to 3 hours is really a kind of a landmark kind of class.
It would make a lot of difference, because ideally, if you look at it, and let's talk about the government school teachers. I think for months, post-elections and before elections, they're doing a whole lot of other administrative tasks. Every time the education department wants something, they have to run around and do a lot of other things. When you talk of schools like ours also, yes, you're right, there is a lot of work if you look at it. But if we manage to implement things in a more systematic manner, I think every school can plan better. So, if the worksheets are ready prior to the session starting, if, your question banks are ready and they can just choose from that, I think a lot of these administrative, mundane things will be eased out for teachers. Making use of this flipped classroom module, then the children come in better prepared. So you don't waste your time introducing the topic, but actually children are going to come back to you with some kind of prior knowledge. So that cuts down your time on teaching, gives you effective time for project work, creativity, and a whole lot of other things, I think. So I do believe that, the best thing is to limit the teaching hours for teachers. Costs involved, of course. If we can do it, then I think they get time to research, they get time to refresh their minds of the latest things and bring that vibrancy back into the classrooms.
When we talk of a child in a school, quite often parents have something called their unrealized dreams. They could not get into an IIT. They want the child to get into an IIT. They couldn't get into an IIM. They want the child to get in. They couldn't become a doctor. They want the child to become a doctor. But nobody asks the child what he or she wants to be. It's the parents who take a call on it. As an educational institution, as an educator, as an academician, as a mentor, do you ever think we should have a system where children are analyzed so that they don't become square pegs in round holes? Do you think we need a system where they are exposed to the world of music, art, whatever they want to be, hotel management, or be a baker, or anything for that matter, dancer? But in India, if you are not a doctor or an engineer, then you are considered good for nothing. But there are so many other professions which are even better than in engineering or a doctor. Do you think we need to encourage more such activities in children?
Absolutely. And, this is like somebody's unfulfilled dream cannot be enforced onto the next generation. So I always feel that any change that we ought to begin with the education system, we must bring about the awareness with the parents. and then talk to the teaching community. Today, I think we have aware parents, and I would say we would be a privileged lot to say that they don't look at just getting into an IIT or into medical school as the only option for their children. There are a few cases, of course, and if the child is willing, we do encourage it. But how do schools change that entire paradigm shift, to bring about that awareness, is to start exposing children to a lot of activities where they can, then get the feel of what I'm passionate about. Quite often, you could even have a senior school student coming and telling you, I still haven't figured out what I'm really passionate about. And then you need to help them delve deeper and to say, what made you happy? And then you get on to lots of other discussions with them. And then you start edging them to read a little more, to attend a few more concerts maybe, or to attend a few plays, or to get into the science lab, get in for a little bit of research. So you should be open as a school to create these opportunities. Quite often, we use our parent community to help assist our children because we trust our parents that they will motivate and guide our children. Apart from that, I think having a great career guidance and counseling cell can make a marked difference for children to go and just vent their feelings out and to decide for themselves what they want to do. And if they want to get to a particular, let's say, if not an Ivy League, they want to aspire for some other university, what they should do. So the preparation time is more than 4 years. When you start thinking about it, you start making your student portfolio, you start analyzing whether this is what you want to do. And also sometimes, when a child is still confused, I always tell them, especially if they're going abroad, don't worry about taking an undecided major. It's not the end of the world because you have that option there in US. So it's okay. And after 1 year, I'm sure you'll figure out what you want to do and then choose your stream. Indian education is slowly opening up to that. And I hope NEP will make our colleges with the credits. And now they're saying that we're not going to be, just from the science streams or from the art streams, but you can, take a bag of subjects that you are interested in. That is true education. If you look at our ancient, universities like Nalanda, Takshashila, there were no boundaries. It was just intellectual discourses going on from people who came from all over the world. That vibrancy must be found. And like you rightly said, the quality of research. I'm glad through the NEP, they also thought of putting in a research, cell. So we train, and IB is really good for that because we start training our children in how to research right from primary years. We talk about academic honesty with them. So it's not cut paste and you take somebody else's work and pass it off, which is happening in the universities today,
PhDs.
like you mentioned. Absolutely. So I think when we train our children, I'm sure that we will see the change in due course.
So take the road that's less traveled by, as Robert Frost said once. As we close this discussion and coming into the point, Prime Minister Modi often said, we are a nation of unicorns. We are a nation of startups today. We need to be a nation that provides jobs. We need job providers, not job seekers. Quite often, that's what is happening today among the students, that most of them, either they try for a government job or they try for a regular 9 to 6 job. And quite often, they get frustrated. They get nowhere at the end of it. Everybody remembers a PV Sindhu, but nobody remembers the person who scored first rank in IIT 10 years ago. God knows where he or she is today. But my point to you is, as a school, we have Atal Tinkering Labs and all these things happening around the place with Niti Aayog and all that. Do you think the schools also have a responsibility to create a culture of entrepreneurship among students?
Absolutely. And I think we do that from middle school above. So we have engaged and we were one of the first schools to have entrepreneurship as an activity over the weekend, where children are taught about what is that gap in society that you feel your idea, will be valued. And they come up with these brilliant solutions. And then they're trained on, market gaps, marketing, finance, and how are they going to pitch that particular product and so on and so forth. And I was surprised 2 years down the line, we had entrepreneurs in 7th grade and, making it on their own. So when he walked into my office with that visiting card, I said, wow, that's what schools need to do. Just open your doors to anything that's new and everything else is history. So we have it not just as a subject in 11th and 12th now introduced by CBSE and everything, but I think we've been doing it right up middle school. So the children, when they're not under pressure of board examination, I think it's the right time for them to start seeing what are the skills that I require to become an entrepreneur. And the moment you tell them that you can become a job provider, they say, wow, at least let me make an attempt. Also, you have to train children to fail and be proud of it. Because no failure is fatal and it's just a stepping stone to success. And in India, for us, failure is, I think, the worst word that we have, where they think children give up lives because they haven't fared well in an examination. So that's the trauma that society has created on them with undue pressure. So when you can train the children, believe me, I've seen some of the mediocre students who are the ones who are best at entrepreneurship. And they're the ones who will probably engage the ones who got those 90s. So I think it's fair enough. I think it's just an opening for these children and they can just do great because they have that business acumen, which perhaps that 90% plus student didn't have at all. Right?
Yeah, I think that's something that I should tell parents and students who are watching this interview, that the Israeli commando force, one of the best in the world, they have a policy when they recruit the commandos. That policy is very simple. It says that you should have failed once in your life, professionally or personally. Only then you are taken into that force. Of course, you have to undergo the training and all. But I think, as you rightly said, many Indian parents, we as academicians and others, and even students, think failure is something that is the end of the world. It is not. It is how you pick yourself up and run from there. That makes the difference. I think that is very important. As we close the discussion, let me ask you this question as to how do you think your academic journey was there over the years? I mean, are you happy with this and satisfied? Or do you think there is still a lot more to be done as we go along?
Well, I think in very many areas, I'm very happy. Because we've always had the freedom to execute, what goes on in the class, with no restrictions. I have never felt that CBSE as a board has ever curtailed my creative intention, what I would like for the school and for the teachers to start executing it. I don't feel that it is IB or CBSE that gives you that green flag. It is for us as educators and heads of organizations to run an organization the way we think that is deserving of our children and what is best for them for the future. However, like I repeated earlier, one area that I'm very particular about is to enhance the reading skills of children so that it broadens their perspective and also get down to better quality of research. These two areas, are very, very close to my heart. And I think there is no stopping us. It's just a journey. And I think we'll have to keep working on it. Because I think the books can be your best friends. And I think the intellect opens up because you get into the realms of somebody else's thinking. And then you step back and you start reflecting on, am I on the same page as them or can I think differently? So inside you're having these dialogues all the time. And I think that is the best thing that I think we need to give to our children.
Reading, of course, and even writing for that matter. I mean, kids today don't write actually. They just study whatever there in the class. And that's a wonderful conversation we had with you, Dr. Usha Reddy. And I think as we understand the journey that you have been through, that your school, Meridian, has been through, I think it makes a lot more interesting in trying to understand how education has progressed over the years. And I think you rightly took us through a journey over the last 35 minutes into telling us the entire thing. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Usha Reddy, CEO of Meridian Schools and Principal of Meridian School here in Banjara Hills, Hyderabad. A conversation where she evolved into talking about how her educational institution has grown over the years, how she looked at the pedagogy of education, and of course, where the future lies. This is Suresh Kochatal here, signing off for Brainfeed EdTalks, powered by Tutoroot Technologies. Thank you for watching.